everyone, welcome back to the Hardware News Recap of the Week. In this one, we'll be talking about the Nintendo Switch 2 that was stolen out of the back of a truck. Actually, it was $1.4 million worth of them stolen out of the back of a truck that was going to GameStop. Further, AMD has got a 5500X3D for AM4, so the socket continues to live. That's like 9 years now of CPUs coming out on AM4. I think over a year ago, we said when the 58 or 5700X3D came out that this is probably the last one for AM4. And then the next time one came out, I said, I'm going to stop saying it's the last one for AM4. And AMD is now proving that choice to be the correct one because they're still launching processors for AM4. They also have Threadripper news. We'll go over some of that. So the first party benchmarks from AMD. Additionally, stories about Nexus Mods, no relation to us, and more. Let's get into the news. Before that, this video is brought to you by the Thermaltake TR100 Portable Mini ITX case. The TR100 case has a mesh ventilated front panel, heavily perforated side and top panels, and claims to support up to 280mm liquid coolers and large GPUs up to 360mm long and 70mm thick. It even has an optional suitcase with cutouts for the system, a mouse, keyboard, and monitor for transport. The Thermaltake TR100 Mini ITX case targets portable, smaller form factor PC building while maintaining compatibility for relatively large components. Learn more at the link in the description below. Quick update on our side. We've posted 3 new videos over to our GNCA channel, which is our channel focused on consumer advocacy topics, and that includes a new 2-hour deep dive special report on the channel, and we'll link these below. The new posts also include an episode of Tip Line, which is our sort of hardware news equivalent, same format as this, over on that channel, and that has stories focused on right to repair, consumer rights, product safety and recalls, and the general just enshittification of technology. We also posted an update on the PayPal lawsuit on the GNCA channel, and we posted this 2-hour long format deep dive follow-up to the tariff story that we ran a couple months ago. This time, over on GNCA, it featured the CEO of German-Swiss company Arctic Cooling, CEO of Taiwanese manufacturer Lian Li, CEO of Taiwanese manufacturer Thermaltake, CEO and COO of German manufacturer Be Quiet, Rob Teller of US manufacturer Heist returning, General Manager Wei Yang of Cooler Master USA returning, outgoing CEO of Corsair returning as well, and the owner of the warehouse that GN uses, which is the first time you get to see inside our warehouse actually. And here's a 90-second trailer for that special report. Really the key thing was this question that I kept asking. I'm just trying to get an understanding from everyone today of what's the situation now, how has it changed things? Is it fixed? Is it all done now? Is everything fixed now? Is it better? You know, what's changed? What's the situation now? Is it all gone? Now I'm looking for what the fuck is going on.
If you make tariffs too high, then you open up smuggling.
We're going to pay $9.9 million, close to $10 million in tariff.
I don't know if it's better or worse at this point that like now the courts are disagreeing with the administration is disagreeing with the courts.
We're pushing our some suppliers and moving the facility outside of China. We're pushing them like you have to move out within like 2 months.
If a company still want to survive, you have to, think about the future strategy, not like before.
We have a huge amount of stock of fans right now that is lying at the distributor, at the manufacturer, and we didn't ship all of it to US.
Which one's the worst, I guess?
Thermal compound.
Thermal compound? I haven't heard that yet. Why thermal? What is that classified as?
Because that's not in the bracket of the IT hardware products. The 145% total tariff would have hit.
But in other ways, they're the same.
I do continue to feel like we're better than our competitors, namely Corsair. And that's just a magical way to wake up in the morning.
Being better than Corsair.
I wouldn't want to wake up any other way.
Got it. We'll make sure they get the message. I'm sure they've already seen it. As a reminder, the GNCA channel was created to host sort of some of these wider consumer advocacy focused reports that we're doing, while GN here remains computer hardware focused. So we created this split so that people who just want the hardware can stick here. That does include hardware specific investigations, while those of you who like our consumer advocacy focused research reports and follow-ups to things can get more of them at GNCA. GNCA also tackles topics that may be more sensitive, so if that's not your thing, then stick here for just the computer hardware, and if you like that, then check it out. And with that, we also just received these honeypot foil t-shirts and their accompanying honeypot cards. These are in stock and shipping now with each shirt including a card. We are donating profits from the honeypot t-shirts to a split of archive.org, the PIRG, or Public Interest Research Group, and the Cramden Institute. And that will be all profits from those shirts going to those 3 groups. The shirts have become a fundraiser for these 3 excellent consumer rights organizations, with Archive preserving the internet in a way that prevents corporate gaslighting, PIRG, fighting for warranty and repair rights, as introduced to us by Louis Rossmann, and the Cramden Institute for its e-waste recycling and PC refurbishing for the community. The shirts include a broken honeypot design on the front using a shiny foil for the spilling honey with a special GN logo featuring a bee flying away. The card is technically playable in tabletop card games if you'd like. It even has a stealing mechanic reading, quote, "When honeypot is cast, create 2 treasure tokens for opponent, and then immediately take control of them," end quote. You can grab these on store.gamersnexus.net to support Archive, PIRG, and Cramden. All right, up first, the Nintendo Switch 2 has been wildly popular, and it's been popular enough that it's getting stolen out of trucks. So it's the next big heist movie, is stealing the Nintendo Switch 2. It's like kind of it's a weird Ocean's 11 sequel. This comes about from the Arapahoe County Sheriff Department in Colorado, which recently revealed that $1.4 million worth of Switch 2 consoles and their games were stolen. The robbery occurred in Bennett, Colorado, quote, "after a high-dollar cargo heist took place," end quote, the department tweeting this out. The police department described the scene, saying, quote, "A semi-truck driver reported that he had just discovered his trailer had been broken into during a pre-trip inspection, and several pallets of the newly released Nintendo Switch 2 game consoles were stolen. 2,810 of them, to be exact," end quote, from the Sheriff's Department. The Sheriff's Department says each Switch 2 costs $500, which we assume and take to mean that they are representing the $500 Mario Kart World bundle. And this makes sense, because we would assume that police departments around the world are troubled by the dangerous and irresponsible ambitions that a game like Mario Kart World could instill upon the youth of today, and their banana peel throwing shenanigans. But at 2,810 units, as reported, this would amount to over $1.4 million in retail value at that price. The department added, quote, "The driver told deputies he was en route to a GameStop store in Grapevine, Texas from Nintendo America in Richmond, Washington," end quote. So he was headed to a GameStop for drop-off. And to be fair to the drivers, the games did stop. Do you see what I did? Now, at the time we're filming this, the Sheriff's Department is still on the lookout for the culprit, and what's that? I'm being told we have GN Chopper R9 above the scene. We're cutting to the chopper footage now, and while we don't know who the thieves are, it appears that the culprit is a solo operator wearing a red hat, blue and red suit, and is armed with turtle shells and dangerous. Up next, AMD previously announced its upcoming Ryzen Threadripper 9000 CPUs at Computex, and now it has some first-party benchmarks it's putting out on the processors, a little more detail on some of the specs for other SKUs. It hasn't revealed prices yet. They're going to be very expensive, as Threadripper is, and AMD claims that these are up to 145% better than its chosen Intel counterparts. AMD decided to compare against Intel's Xeon W9 3595X, and AMD says that its Threadripper 9980X is up to 22 to 108% higher performance across a variety of workloads that include content creation, 3D visualization, Adobe software, and more. Now, you might notice that Premiere only shows a 22% increase. Now, we dug into this, and that's because in 50% of scenarios, Adobe Premiere simply doesn't work. It crashes. Software's hard, we get it. Adobe is a small, tiny company with barely any bootstraps to pull itself up by other than the $161 billion ones that it has currently, and it needs to continue increasing the software licensing fees and restricting the seats available and the use cases for those licenses. We forgive you, Adobe, but also f you. Look, we have to use Adobe every day. It's like personal at this point. Anyway, the biggest difference in AMD's first-party tests were in Corona render, with AMD claiming up to a 108% improvement for this chart. Unreal Engine compilation fell in the middle at 65%. The W9 3595X is a 60-core CPU with 120 threads. That's the one from Intel. AMD also compared its upcoming Threadripper Pro 9995WX against its older Threadripper Pro 7995WX and showed a performance uplift ranging from 13 to 26% across categories such as design and manufacturing, media and entertainment, engineering, and more. That'd be the more like-for-like comparison against their older part. Now, personally, I'm looking forward to Der Bauer's review of the R9 9995WX because I want to see if the AI subtitles can figure out if he's just switched back to his native language and is saying no a whole lot, or if he's saying the number 9. Speaking of AI, that was slick. I've ruined it. Anyway, because stocks conceivably go up anytime a company exec says the word AI, AMD had a slide comparing the AI capabilities of the Pro 9995WX against Intel's W9 3595X. These names are going to kill me. Here, AMD's Threadripper CPU allegedly performs 28 to 49% faster. That's right, the marketing bullshit arrives up to 50% faster with this CPU. Finally, AMD also compared both CPUs across media and entertainment applications and claims the 9995WX is up to 118 to 145% faster compared to Intel's W9 3595X processor. Jesus fucking Christ, these names. I've had to do so many additional takes in this section that I normally don't have to do. Similar to the prior AMD Threadripper CPUs, some will be Pro and some will be non-Pro parts. These are high-end desktop parts called HEDT. Memory support officially is up to DDR5 6400 ECC, and pricing hasn't been announced yet. It will be in the thousands of dollars, especially for these higher-end parts, and launch is expected for July. We're hoping to review them. We'll see. The plan would be to test them similarly to when we did our previous Threadripper benchmark, so that would include WS, workstation, spec workstation testing alongside the Adobe suite, Blender, all that other stuff that we test, including power efficiency and things like that, and thermals, of course, too. So hopefully we'll get some reviews up for those Threadripper parts whenever they launch based on the current understanding in July. AMD also is launching a 5500X3D in Latin America. So speaking of AMD CPUs, but on the much cheaper side, we reported last year on rumors that the company would be releasing a 5500X3D, and it just did. Like AMD's previous 5000 series processors, this is on AM4. So the 5500X3D now marks the 9th year installment of CPUs for AM4. And at this point, AM4 stands for AM4 ever. Do you see what that's right? We had two of them in one episode. In terms of specs, the CPU is based on AMD's Zen 3 architecture and is basically a slower 5600X3D. Just like the 5600X3D, the new one is a 6-core, 12-thread part, and it has 96 megabytes of L3 cache and a 105-watt advertised TDP. The frequency, though, is slower. The 5600X3D was advertised as, and we confirmed it having, a 4.4 gigahertz boost frequency. The 5500X3D brings the figures for base down to 3 gigahertz and the boost to 4 gigahertz. Now, this is a relatively large drop in frequency. We've seen that cache can have an impact that can counter some of the reduction in frequency. You see this in some of the other X3D versus non-X3D tests we've done. But it just depends on how far they're dropping the frequency, what the impact will be, and what the gains are. So we're going to try and get one in. We don't currently have the CPU data set up to speed because we've been doing all the GPUs and cases and coolers and stuff lately. So I need to spin that up to test it. We'd also need to get one. I haven't checked recently in the US listings, but if you're in one of the markets that has the 5500X3D and you'd like to sell one to us, then you can go ahead and ping tips, TIPS at gamersnexus.net. Up next, Intel's alleged BMG G31 GPUs might be like a B770 or something like that. Now, we've previously reported on how Intel's rumored Battlemage G31 GPU was in the works, and then there were rumors that it was killed, and now there's rumors that it's back again. So, does this provide value at this point? No, but at least we're aware of that. The rumor has it that the card, we're still going to do this story. The rumor has it that the card has awoken from its slumber and stated, the rumors of my demise were greatly exaggerated. According to videocards.com, Ada64 beta version 7.99.7817 contains, quote, GPU information for Intel Battlemage BMG G31. This GPU is believed to be the predecessor for Intel's much-rumored Arc B770 card. The publication adds that BMG G31 is expected to offer, quote, 32x E-cores and a 256-bit memory bus, end quote. Check back next time to hear rumors of it being dead again. And once again, this brings back sort of the philosophical discussion of, if a product launches in a forest and a tree doesn't fall, then can it really be canceled? I think I'm mixing metaphors. Up next, gaming modding site Nexus Mod has new owners, not to be confused with Gamers Nexus, although we are part of the same Nexus multiverse. Nexus Mods was founded by Robin Scott, who recently wrote on the site, quote, "After almost 24 years of running Nexus Mods, the time has come for me to step back from the day-to-day management of the site. This isn't a decision I've made lightly, far from it, but one I think is in both my and the community's best interests. I started this project back in 2001 in my bedroom with a 56K modem, an excitement for the upcoming release of Morrowind, and with no grand ambitions or intentions. I didn't set out to build a business. I just wanted to make a place where modders could share their work without worrying it would vanish into the internet ether the next time a fan site went offline or a publisher decided they were done with it. That idea grew legs, sprouted arms, and turned into Nexus Mods," end quote. And saying that it grew legs and sprouted arms has sort of that terrifying Skyrim-esque era mods visual to it that just seems fitting here. The quote continues, quote, "Since then, the site has been my entire adult life. Every single day for over 2 decades, I've been on call, whether it was fixing issues, reading feedback, pushing updates, or getting pulled into the latest bit of community drama. It's been rewarding, sometimes chaotic, often exhausting, and always personal. Somewhere along the way, I forgot to step back and breathe or sleep properly," end quote. Now the founder, Robin Scott here, who goes by the username Dark1, added, quote, "I firmly believe that the best thing for the future of Nexus Mods is to step aside and bring in new leadership to steer the business forward with renewed energy to make Nexus Mods the modding community we all truly deserve." He expands on saying that the reason he's been doing this is looking for someone who gets the modding community and finding an owner who, quote, "would be able to understand and respect the myriad intricacies of both Nexus Mods as a business and the wider modding community as being essential," end quote. Dark1 noted that he spent months seeking new ownership and leaders, claiming that not much will change for the users. Dark1 wrote, quote, "Nexus Mods is community first and mod author focused. That's not up for negotiation," end quote. Elaborating on the site's new ownership, Scott wrote, quote, "In terms of new faces, you'll be seeing more of Victor, Marinus, and Nikolai, with their usernames there, who've come on board to lead this next chapter. They've got deep roots in gaming tech, and most importantly, they give a damn about the site, the community, and the future we're trying to build here." Now, Gamers Nexus asked Nexus Mods for details on the changes to Nexus Mods, and Nexus Mods support answered Gamers Nexus with the following Nexus. Quote, "Dark1 will not be disappearing. He will be working with the team and the new owners to help guide the overall direction of the site, just without needing to be the person who signs off on everything," end quote. Now, skepticism online following this matches pretty much everything you see anytime any company sells, which is mostly focused on concerns over whether Nexus Mods will next become sort of a money-focused monetization avenue for mods or mod authors or whatever it may be. So that was most of the discussion we saw online around this. That's what it's been centered on. Now, obviously, you just need time to see how it actually shapes up. There have been successful transitions of ownership in the past. It's just, I think people are used to seeing these sort of large venture capital takeovers of things that then drive them into the ground. So whatever happens here, they've at least said the right things. It's just a question of what happens in the future for Nexus Mods. Now, as a personal note on Nexus Mods, I used Nexus Mods a lot for Morrowind, Oblivion, and Skyrim, both just when I was playing the games, but also when we started doing early coverage of things like the best mods for Skyrim or performance mods or whatever it may have been way back in the day now for GN. And the site always was, it was pretty cool for being able to get access to all that stuff. And actually the way I really got into computer hardware in general was from Jedi Knight Academy, which is not a Nexus mod story, but is a modding story, where that was the game where I learned how to use and install mods and things like working with zip files, as basic as it sounds. Like, I think that was the first place I kind of had an awareness to encountering things like zip files or .ini files, batch files, things like that. All of that came from modding that eventually led me here. So Nexus Mods I have an appreciation for, because installing mods in games and troubleshooting, especially Morrowind and especially Oblivion, when the tools were completely non-existent for the most part, that was a skill that built a lot of general software navigation skills. So anyway, we'll see what happens with it. Up next, Galax has GPUs that use RGB to warn against cable. Galax has found a use case for RGB LEDs and 12-volt high power. Red will warn about the 12-volt high power cable being a dumpster fire, and it's all out of green and blue. The company's Hall of Fame GPUs, which include the GeForce 5070 Ti Hall of Fame Gaming and the 5080 Hall of Fame Gaming, will let their light shine to let you know if the 16-pin connectors aren't connected properly. Now, as we discussed in our 12-volt high power dumpster fire video, this is part of the problem, with the greater problem being the standard itself not having enough safety margin. And we have like a 50-something minute deep dive into the standard and the spec and all of the problems in that video. Now, Galax says that the cards will light up yellow, quote, when the PCIe 5.0 16 pin is not connected properly, and will light up red when, quote, the PCIe slot power is abnormal, end quote. Now, this is in contrast to other NVIDIA cards, which simply light up fire when the connector's on fire. Up next, Microsoft recently announced that it had partnered with AMD to produce next-gen Xbox consoles following the news of Microsoft partnering with Asus to make the handheld. Xbox's sales have been poor as of late, coupled with the company seemingly making a pivot to sell its exclusive games on other platforms, like the Nintendo Switch and the PlayStation 5. Regardless, Xbox President Sarah Bond took to YouTube to say,
I am thrilled to share we've established a strategic multi-year partnership with AMD to co-engineer silicon across a portfolio of devices, including our next-generation Xbox consoles, in your living room and in your hands.
Now, this is in part in reference to the Asus Microsoft ROG Xbox Ally X that they are working on, which is a gaming handheld we talked about in the last episode, but it wouldn't surprise us if more Xbox branded or focused handhelds are on the way as well. And one other thing that we noticed, Xbox is serious. And we know Xbox is serious because Xbox broke out the business hands. As you can see in this exclusive footage that's available publicly on YouTube and has been viewed millions of times, but is exclusive, Bond handed the reins over to AMD's Lisa Su, who continued the use of business hands while announcing AMD's efforts in collaboration. That's right, we've watched a lot of keynotes here at Gamers Nexus, and there's one thing that we've noticed in all of them. Is that the business hands come out when there's serious business. Anyway, Bond continued with this.
Together with AMD, we are advancing the state of art in gaming silicon to deliver the next generation of graphics innovation to unlock a deeper level of visual quality and immersive gameplay and player experiences enhanced with the power of AI, all while maintaining compatibility with your existing library of Xbox games.
Given that the Xbox console sales have floundered for years, there's a chance that this may be the beginning of the end for Xbox consoles if they're not able to gain ground against the competition. Unless, like Costco hot dogs, which sell for $1.50 a pop, Microsoft wants to keep Xbox consoles around as a sort of loss leader to get people in the doors. That's right, we just called Xbox consoles the Costco hot dogs of the gaming industry, and you can fight me in the comments over it, but don't bring your Costco bagels because we don't talk about that situation. And there is actually a situation, but we don't talk about it. But Xbox has had a hard time the last couple years, so we'll be interested in seeing how they try to recover their sales. Now, speaking of failures, Intel. According to the Oregonian, quote, Intel plans to lay off up to a fifth of its factory workers, end quote. In an email sent to employees, Intel Foundry's general manager and executive vice president reportedly wrote this, quote, these are difficult actions, but essential to meet our affordability challenges and current financial position of the company. It drives pain to every individual, end quote. The publication reports that this internal email stated the company is planning to lay off between 15 and 20% of its workforce, with cuts happening in July. The Oregonian estimates that the layoffs could impact, quote, possibly more than 10,000 jobs, end quote. And this would be in addition to the roughly 15,000 Intel layoffs that occurred last year, plus voluntary departures adding several thousand last year. This time around, however, the Oregonian reports that there will be no buyouts or offers for early retirement. Elaborating on what positions will be eliminated, Intel's EVP stated, quote, these reductions will be based on a combination of portfolio changes, level and position elimination, skill assessment for remaining positions, and some hard decisions around our project investments. We are also taking into consideration factory operations impact, end quote, in the reported email. Now, if these layoffs end up proving true, then they would be happening about 4 months after Intel's new CEO, Lip-Bu Tan, took control of the company and announced that Intel had objectives of eliminating layers of middle management and flattening the management structure to more closely basically match sort of how NVIDIA is formatted. A lot of that was focused, though, on getting rid of jobs that seemingly did very little, with the messaging in that first statement from the CPU, from the CEO. They've really gotten good with AI there. They just haven't told, it's actually just a CPU that took over the company. But if it's an Intel CPU, maybe that explains why they're just shedding people. It's kind of like, it's like the oxidation problem, except it's people. But anyway, the CEO, get that right this time. The CEO stated that they were eliminating a lot of these wasteful management layers in between. This, though, These are factory jobs and fab worker jobs in some of these instances for Intel's foundry, which has been Intel's focus in trying to build its future by building out its foundry to the extent that Intel received billions of dollars from the federal government to build fabs and factories in the US and employ people there. That was kind of the whole point of the $8 billion that they got from the US government. The fabs are still under construction. Intel has paused other factory investments, including in other countries, and it is now seemingly laying people off from the foundry division. So things not going great over there. Speaking of Intel, two leakers have allegedly revealed information on Intel's new upcoming Nova Lake S CPUs. Surely these will save the company. Leaker Golden Mango tweeted an image seemingly revealing 7 upcoming Intel CPUs that are headlined by a Core Ultra 9 all the way down to a Core Ultra 3. The specs include a 16P core, 32E core, 4 LPE core, that's getting really complicated, 150 watt Ultra 9, followed by a 14P core Ultra 7, 8P core 5, down to a 4P core 4E core solution. The image also highlights how there will be 3 Ultra 5 SKUs, all of which supposedly will be 125 watt processors. TechSpot writes, quote, Nova Lake S will introduce a new LGA 1854 socket and 900 series chipset, necessitating new motherboards but enabling a host of next generation features, end quote. And this would move Intel to a new socket within one generation of its highly criticized Lake S processors that launched. So it's at the same time as AMD is launching its AM4 5500X3D. Like total opposites of what they're doing. Leaker Jkin also shared alleged Nova Lake platform PCIe and USB specs, which indicate chipset support at allegedly 48 total PCIe lanes for I/O, and indicating as well 24 being PCIe 5.0. This last one is fun. This is a PlayStation 1 engineering project from Motherboard. Taken to the PSX subreddit, engineering enthusiast Lorenzo Brodesco wrote, quote, after months of reverse engineering and design, I'm proud to share the mock-up of NS1, the first fully PlayStation 1 compatible motherboard built entirely from scratch by one person. This isn't an emulator, it's not an FPGA, it's not a modern replica, end quote. NS1 stands for Not Sony's One. And Brodesco claims, quote, it's a real motherboard compatible with the original PS1 chips, CPU, GPU, SPU, RAM, oscillators, regulators, etc., and fully plug and play in the original case, end quote. The engineer provided some background for the project and wrote that repairing the PS1 inspired the idea, noting that the engineer, quote, used techniques such as sanding down the original board and cross-referencing the exposed layers with data sheets for components like RAM and memory to define the pinouts. I also relied on original service manuals to guide the process, end quote. Brodesco says that the motherboard uses a new format, quote, it's based on the PU23 series used in the SCPH900X compact models, but reintroduces the parallel port, which Sony had removed, end quote, on Reddit. Brodesco also provided some images and wrote, quote, what you see here is a mock-up used to validate the footprints of the chips and connectors, all of which were redrawn from scratch, since they were undocumented proprietary components, end quote. The completed board is already done and will reportedly be released soon. It was done through reverse engineering to make it, so pretty cool project. All right, that's it for hardware news this week. Thanks for watching. As always, subscribe for more. Check out some of our other videos we put lately. There's a lot, actually. We did an Alienware review where I didn't completely hate the computer. The price was pretty bad, but they fixed a lot, which was odd. So anyway, that's on the channel. You should check it out. And then we also had the story on the counterfeit 9800X3D, which was also bizarre. But otherwise, subscribe for more. Go to store.gamersnexus.net to help us out directly, like by grabbing our mod mats, solder mats, dice, shirts like these, and more, or patreon.com/gamersnexus, and check out our GNCA videos. We'll see you all next time.